Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football, NFL, and college football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? NFL draft season is here, and today we're going to tell you the three riskiest players in this draft and the three safest players in this draft. And joining me, like always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Draft week is here, and I cannot wait. This is my favorite time of the year. I think it's a lot of our fans' favorite time of the year because this right here can make or break your season. We saw what happened when C.J. Stroud did. So right now, with the parity that happens in the NFL, this draft can decide the next 5 to 10 years of your team.
Alex, absolutely. And look, this is where you build Super Bowl rosters right here. It's the NFL draft. Free agency is great. It can definitely make a difference. You can fill some holes on a roster. Maybe a big free agent here or there can be the difference between a Super Bowl team and not. But the base and the foundation of a Super Bowl team always starts in April. This is going to be a fun episode, Alex, because we were looking at these top guys and we decided to come up with a combined list here of the three players that we think are the riskiest players that have, quite frankly, the highest percentage of being a bust, a potential bust in this draft, and three guys that we think are the safest. And so basically three guys that we think have the highest floor in this draft, guys that we really have a hard time thinking wouldn't at the very least be solid starters in the NFL. Alex, let's start with our riskiest players. There's a couple quarterbacks in this class that we think are really, really risky.
Yeah, and we can, without a doubt, number one with the bullet is J.J. McCarthy. I've been asking this question. If you've listened to any of the previous podcasts from any of the guests, we've all had the same question for all of them. At least I know I have. Is why has this kid shot up all the way up the board when he was more of a back end first round? Actually, probably started somewhere way around the fourth or fifth round when the season started. Played his way, and salute to him, to a second round pick, back end first, and firmly as a first round pick. And now, since the end of the national championship game, he has catapulted himself up from the back end of the first round into the top 10, where some teams like the Vikings may trade 2 first round picks this year just to move up to get him. And I cannot simply understand or see the value in doing that.
The things that people like are some of the traits. I think it's always risky when you draft a guy primarily based on traits. It's not to say that he didn't do any nice things at Michigan or isn't capable of making some high-level throws. I think he is, but this is an unfinished product. This is a guy that I think still has a lot of developing to do before he's going to be ready to be a starter in the NFL. And when you're talking about a guy that everybody is looking at is a potential top 10 pick. He's been the talk of this draft in a lot of ways going into the draft as a guy that we think that people are going to trade up for or possibly trade multiple first round picks to go get this guy. To me, that screams high risk. 6'3", 200 pounds or so. He's not ideal size, but he has good size, so I understand that. I think he has a B plus arm. I think he has B plus athletic ability. I know that there's a lot of people that talk about the leadership qualities, the high football IQ, and that's great. And he played in a pro-style offense. I'm not saying there's nothing to like about J.J. McCarthy, and I'm not saying that he can't develop into a good quarterback. I just think there's so much risk involved with this particular quarterback. I know I've got a second-round grade on this guy, and to be considered a top 10 pick, I think is almost crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to be fair, a back end first, early second round, because it's been the age. So what you're telling me is if Michael Penix, if Bo Nix, Jane Daniels has already been pushed up into the top 5 because he has the run ability that's kind of really boosted him up. But if you tell me, if we take those 2 other quarterbacks, obviously Michael Penix has the injuries, and you take that away, all of these guys would be ahead of JJ McCarthy, but because they're 23 now, going to be 24 by the time the season starts, they get pushed behind JJ McCarthy. But the only thing in being the age, because like you said, it's not the actual skill sets, it's the fact that we hear he's a winner and he's a leader. Well, a lot of quarterbacks are winners in a sense, or a leader. There's a quarterback from my school that I root for in Florida that was a winner and a leader in Tim Tebow. And that's not a shot. We're just simply talking about the intangible traits. But what about that 15-yard out when you need to throw it on a rope? What about going down the field? Again, I've said this several times. This is a player that throws into the middle of the field 70% of the time. He lives in the middle of the field. And that, to me, screams Alex Smith.
Is that his ceiling? I mean, let's talk floor and ceiling here, because I think if he reaches his full potential, and look, Alex Smith was a quality quarterback in the league, but is that his ceiling? Do you see him being a Alex Smith level of player? Because I don't think it's a terrible comp if he reaches his full potential.
Alex Smith used to be the line of demarcation for quarterbacks. I kind of pushed it up in this more of a open style offense to a little bit more of an Andy Dalton, where there's a little bit more throwing, passing concepts happening. So I think he can maybe be anywhere in between Alex Smith and Andy Dalton.
I'll tell you his floor, Alex. For me, if you guys remember a quarterback named Christian Hackenberg for the New York Jets, who came out of Penn State, got drafted not based on production, but got drafted really based off of traits, and then ended up flaming out and not being a productive player in the league, was out of the NFL rather quickly. I think his floor could be, or his story, if things don't work out, could be very similar here, because JJ is basically getting drafted under the same premise. A guy with a lot of traits and has some athletic ability, a similar build, and people just kind of fell in love with the potential. And I think that's what's happening right here with JJ McCarthy, is we're overhyping the potential of what he could be, and we're ignoring what he actually is now and how far he has to go to potentially be one of those guys. Alex, there's another quarterback on this list of our riskiest players, and that's LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels. I know you've said on other episodes you think he's a straight boom or bust prospect, and I tend to agree.
Obviously, the traits and his actual ability are kind of off the charts, and throwing down the field. Obviously, again, looking at that Florida game where he just shredded us is a big thing. So you see that, you get excited, and it's an exciting player. But I just simply believe he is a boom or bust player. Either it's going to be great or it's just not. It's not going to be good at all. And that's simply because when you get pushed up into the draft, you're more than likely not going to a team with a lot of weapons. So you end up in a situation where you need to start to carry a team a little bit until they're able to add a little bit more. And depending upon where Jane Daniels goes, let's say obviously there's Washington, obviously there's the Patriots. Those teams are pretty much barren. There may Scary Terry's on Washington, but the offensive line is putrid. Of course, you still have the draft, and Patriots are devoid of skill set players. So I just don't see him succeeding at a very high level at all unless he was taken late in the draft. So I just simply look at him as a boom or bust player.
Yeah, and I understand some of the things people get excited about because he made a lot of wow plays, especially last season at LSU. But some of the things that scare me about this guy is some of the inconsistencies, ball placement, not always on par, especially when you're talking about the receivers that this guy had to throw to. Watching tape on this guy, it was amazing how many open receivers he had. When you've got Brian Thomas and you've got Malik Neighbors just absolutely torching these college cornerbacks and getting so much separation, I didn't see a whole lot of tight window throws for Jaden Daniels. And we know that is not going to be the case at the next level. I think he has decent velocity. I don't know if it's great. A big concern with me is I think we're getting a guy that's a lot closer to his ceiling coming into the league than a guy like, for instance, a Drake May or Caleb Williams. I don't think we've seen their best football, or even a guy we just talked about, JJ McCarthy for that matter. I think there's still clearly room for him to develop. I don't know how much room there is to develop for a guy like Jaden Daniels, Alex. I mean, he really just had one season in his entire college career where it all came together. So for me, is this just a late bloomer, a guy that just put it together when he had elite talent around him and one of the best coaches in college football?
Yeah, we can look at it that way, and of course you're going to get the people say, "Well, hey, well, then what about Joe Burrow? Everything came together at once for him too. Why can't he be that?" Well, if you look at those two teams and what was going on, there was a lot of pocket awareness. There was a lot of, and then he went to a place that already had some of that as well. Where Jane Daniels is potentially set up to go, it's simply not going to be there, and it's not like you're going to fall into. It's not like he's simply going to fall into some of the things that he had at LSU when he gets to the league. And I think a lot of people are making comparisons to the Joe Burrow, to the points that you made, but that's an anomaly. That doesn't always happen. Anything is possible. We're just simply talking about what we think about the player and where they are right now.
Yeah, absolutely, because he could end up being a great quarterback, and he certainly has the skills, the athletic ability, the running ability. He's going to make some wow plays. I just wonder if he's being a little bit overrated coming into this draft, and I certainly think it's fair to say he's one of the riskier players in this draft. Alex, our third player on our list of the riskiest players in this draft is a guy who seems to be flying up draft boards ever since he broke the combine 40 time. That's, of course, wide receiver out of Texas, Xavier Worthy. Why do you think he's one of the riskiest players in this draft, especially in a class loaded with talented wide receivers?
Okay, we're simply talking about speed with this player, because if you cut on the tape, he doesn't know how to utilize that speed all the way through unless he's running a 9 route. You need a player, when watching him and then watching the guy that was across the field from him in A.D. Mitchell, you can clearly see who was the better receiver on the field at that point in time. Xavier Worthy is not clean in and out of his breaks. If you hit him, he's always running 100 miles an hour. And when you need to perhaps do a simple out or you need to do a simple comeback route, he is consistently slipping on the turf or on the grass because he's always running 100 miles an hour. He has not learned to utilize his speed and know how to keep it under control going in and out of breaks. He cannot run crisp routes, which means any of the NFL trained DBs are going to be able to stick to him regardless of his speed, because he telegraphs where he's going, or he's always slipping going in or out of a break or coming back for a comeback. So he views to me as simply a 9 route or a guy that you just need to go over the top. And those guys are not first round picks.
And I agree with everything you said there. Some of my concerns are the same because I don't think he's a very polished route runner. Way too many drops on tape. Just quite frankly doesn't have the size or the play strength, I think, to be a high-level receiver at the next level. We saw him really struggle against bigger, more physical corners. He struggled against press man coverage, and I think he's going to see a lot of that at the next level. I think the speed is pushing him up the draft boards, and I think it's going to be a big mistake by some team because they're going to fall in love with that 40 time and think about all the explosive plays. And I'm not saying he won't occasionally have one of those, but this is a guy, because of the size, the inconsistent play, the route running, the drops, there is just way, way too many red flags for me to think he's anywhere near being worthy of a first-round pick. Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. I personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. Alex, first on our list of the safest players in this draft, guys that we think have some of the highest floors in this draft, we're going to start with Notre Dame tackle Joe Alt, a guy that I really have a hard time thinking, Alex, that at the very least, I think he's a 10-year starter and a productive player in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can talk about Joe Alt here. The combine, when you looked at it, there were a bunch of other plays that kind of looked a little bit tighter and looser with their hips and what they were doing during the drills. But on that tape, Joe Alt is a stalwart. He's not going to allow a sack. He's going to be where he's supposed to be. His feet, his hand placement, his punch, everything is going to be very crisp and to the point. You're absolutely right. A 10-year starter. We're not necessarily saying a Hall of Famer, but this is going to be a solid starter that once you put him in place, you're going to say, I got this guy. Should you want to keep him for 10 years? I got this guy for 10 years, and I don't have to move off of him because he's going to do what I need him to do for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and he checks so many boxes that make him a safe pick. He has the ideal size, ideal arm length, ideal strength. I mean, he just is basically almost a prototypical mold of what you're looking for in a starting left tackle, and throw in the fact that his dad is a Chiefs Hall of Famer, a former Pro Bowler, a former All-Pro, a guy who himself was a longtime consistent starter in the league. So not only are you getting NFL DNA, but you're talking about a guy who has a really high football IQ because he's had NFL level coaching since he was a kid. And I don't think that can be understated. Next on our list, Alex, is the tight end out of Georgia, Brock Bowers, in a weak tight end class. This guy really stands out, but I don't think it's just because there's not a lot of good tight ends. I think this guy is a special prospect and a guy who's really safe because there's just not very many holes in his game.
Yeah, crisp route runner, can also block. You know, we've talked about it, Brad. You've said it several times. Best hands in the drafts. And yes, that's including Marvin Harrison Jr. You know, soft hands, guy just that will swallow up the ball. I mean, we can talk about comps, Brad, but I mean, I think this guy is just simply off the charts. I think you put him in your office and you're going to have a security blanket for the next, again, another 10-year player on your team that's going to be a security blanket. But these are the things that you want when you go for the first round pick. Everybody always wants to hit the home run and find the Hall of Fame player. But it's really also about simply finding a player that fits your offense, that's going to be a consistent player, that's going to do what you need him to do at a high level. He may not be a Hall of Fame player, but he'll definitely go to a few Pro Bowls and definitely have some All-Pro years, because that's the type of player you'll get when you put Brock Bowers on your team.
You can line him up on the end of the line of scrimmage in the typical Y position, but he's also a guy that you can flex out and play in the slot and in the middle of the field. He's going to create mismatches, route running ability, and the athleticism to even line up wide. So you're talking about a guy who is really a just all-around chess piece for this offense because he's a really good blocker as well. So he's going to be a factor in the run game and, of course, a big-time receiving threat for any offense. I don't think there's any scheme that you could not find a place for him on the field. Impressive player as far as athleticism. He's got good top-end speed. And like Alex said, good change of direction ability, can get by defenders. He's got that high football IQ. He understands zone concepts. He understands how to find holes in the zone, how to shield defenders in man-to-man, how to use his body to box out defenders. I just love this guy as far as I think he does have a high ceiling, but I think he's such a solid prospect and he's so fundamentally sound in so many areas that I just have such a hard time thinking that he's not one of the safest players in this draft. Last but certainly not least on our list, Alex, of the safest players in this draft, Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington. You want to talk about a guy that checks just about every single box when you're looking for an X receiver, it's Rome Odunze.
My comp for him is simply Devontae Adams. The ability to create separation with route running and speed is second to none in terms of what we see from Rome Odunze. Strict 90-degree angle turns and can stop on the drop of a dime and make any quick twitch cut that will lose a receiver or put them in the spin cycle at any moment. Hands, size, he doesn't have elite speed, but the hands and what he does in terms of creating separation are the things that what makes NFL receivers great. Because when you are being guarded by one of the best DBs in the league, it's going to be those sharp cuts, that 1 milliliter of space that you create that a quarterback can put it in the breadbasket that's going to make the difference between a first down or a turnover. And I think Rome Odunze, which is why I keep saying he has the comp for me of Devontae Adams, why I see him as one of the surest things coming out of this draft.
Absolutely. I love this guy's game. And you hit on it. Maybe not elite speed, but certainly good enough speed because he's shown on tape that on vertical routes and deep passing, he can get a step on a guy and pull away from defenders. So I think he has plenty of speed to excel as a number one receiver in the NFL. You mentioned it. He's got great hands, big time catch radius, his change of direction, his route running. He's so polished of a player. I just love this guy's game. I don't think there's really any hole in his game at all. I love his competitiveness. I love everything about his attitude and his work ethic and all the reports you hear about this guy. I think he's the real deal. He can run every single route on the tree to perfection. And on top of that, something that I just don't think gets talked about enough with wide receivers is he is a solid blocker in the run game as well. So there's really not any glaring holes in this guy's game at all. In a very loaded wide receiver class, I think he tends to get, I don't want to say overlooked because certainly people are talking about him as a top 10 pick, but I think in a lot of other classes, and I mean a lot of classes, he would be the lock number one guy.
I think this is a guy, if you put him on any team, doesn't matter if you have an elite quarterback or if you have a quote-unquote mid quarterback, he is going to be able to make a lot of things easier for a quarterback. He's a plug-and-play player, a guy, we've been using the quote-unquote 10-year starter rule for a lot of these guys. I think Rome Odunze actually has the potential to reach the heights of, several Pro Bowls, several All-Pros, perhaps even leading the league in catches and receiving yards, and could possibly be a Hall of Fame player at the end of his career.
Yeah, and when we did our wide receiver rankings, the reason we had this guy above a guy like Malik Neighbors, who, don't get me wrong, is an outstanding prospect in his own right, is because he has more of that ideal size too. So not only does he check all the boxes that we just talked about from athletic standpoint and ability standpoint, the route running and all that, 6'3", 215, big hands, big catch radius. I mean, you can't coach or teach size, and this kid checks that box as well. I think he's about as safe of a prospect as you're going to find in this draft. Guys, if you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. PGF Nation, we hope you guys enjoy the NFL draft. I know we will. And after the draft, we're going to be giving out our NFL draft grades for each NFL team. Going to be a lot of fun. So be sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on those episodes. But once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
You know what's important when you're having a good time? Staying hydrated. And that's where Liquid IV comes in, the category-winning hydration brand that's fueling your well-being. With just one stick of Liquid IV, you get 2 times faster hydration than water alone, plus 5 essential vitamins to keep you feeling your best. And let's not forget about the convenience factor. The packaging is perfect for on the go, whether you're tailgating or just hanging out on the couch. But what really sets Liquid IV apart is the amazing flavors. Personally, I'm all about the Concord grape and lemon lime. And with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks, Liquid IV is made with premium ingredients to give you the hydration and nourishment you need. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code PGFP at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PGFP at liquidiv.com. Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.